Hello and welcome to Business on the Wire. As we cross the halfway mark of the year, COVID cases continue to spike across the country. The urban landscape makes up for almost two-thirds of the bulk of these cases, and there has been incredible stress on healthcare infrastructure. There's also been frequent clashes and differences of opinion between the private healthcare providers and the government establishments on issues like pricing, on issues like support, etc. Where do things go from here? What is the situation on the ground for many healthcare providers? Joining me to talk about all of that is a woman who has a deep understanding of the healthcare system in India, as also what's happening across the economic strains. Ms. Shobna Kamineni, who is Vice Chairperson at the Apollo Hospitals Group, and of course, she's also past President CII. Thank you so much for joining in. As we speak, India has now overtaken Russia to claim the third highest ranking in terms of coronavirus cases. I think at this point, everyone's still trying to figure out, where this is peaking as a situation for India. You're right in the middle of it. What is your sense of where we're at right
now? I think that we're really at the beginning of the wave because two things are happening. One is that we're testing more. You're catching cases. You're also understanding that there are a whole lot more in the community that have got it that have not been reported it with that. And they're infecting a lot more. So every single day you're seeing a rise in the cases. And if we do the math and if we consider the way that we're managing this disease, I do think India will be lucky if, we're still at 8 lakh people infected officially. I think that, we'll be lucky if we finish at 1 crore of known. So it's early days.
I think that's really set the stage for our conversation, Ms. Kamineni. The other thing that we're witnessing that's happening, globally as well, is that after having controlled the spike, there is a wave two. As healthcare providers and as healthcare infrastructure providers, is that a threat that you're very aware of, that once it gets to this peak that you're alluding to, we're not quite done with it? This is a much longer haul for a nation like India.
So, Vitali, I think that, what's happened is that one early lockdown, everybody knows from a medical perspective, it was a good thing. It gave us a little time to prepare. But more important, it gave us time to have access to better protocols and to get the medicine ready. So, this treatment is working. And so what will happen is that in terms of healthcare facilities, if you look at us, in the last 3 months, we've gone from 500 COVID beds to 2,000 COVID beds out of our 10,000. So we still are keeping some open for elective because people will continue to get sick. But as it goes, I think that we might have to convert a few more of our hospitals for this. And I think that but more than anything else, with the government and what we did early on is to create a whole host, an equivalent, if not double the number of beds for quarantining. And I think that this is the key. A lot of countries haven't realized that and done it as well as India is kind of doing it, that we have the quarantine facilities that people can just be put in. And a lot of them are hotels. So that because the asymptomatic, that's all they need. They need a place to self-quarantine safely. And if they get bad, to have facilities to check into, and then they, and otherwise they just, sit it out and not infect more people.
Mm. I am going to get to the preparedness bit in a little while in our conversation, Ms. Kamineni. But I think the other challenge at this point for India specifically is that it almost looks like a concentrated epidemic, where the urban clusters are really facing the brunt of it because of how people generally live in cities like Delhi and Mumbai, Hyderabad, Bangalore. Is that the big challenge for healthcare providers? The fact that there is so much pressure within these small cluster zones, and that is unrelenting?
I have a different approach. I think that it's our cities have more healthcare facilities. Tell me what will happen, and that's really what's going to happen in India. That this is not going to be, a rise and ebb. It's going to be a rise and spread. So it will go to and when it goes to the villages, when it goes to the smaller towns that don't have healthcare facilities, that don't have the understanding of these protocols, I would think that it's as much a worry as the crowded urban areas. And the crowded urban areas, don't get me wrong, I think that this was something that any single health social researcher would know that that's a risk. Even before we knew that those are hotspots, hopefully in around the world, this will be the biggest wake-up call will be for these urban crowding. Change it, really bring in better sanitation. I mean, if this is something that we've learned and we can correct, I think for the future good of mankind, it'll be. It's. I think that's a win. So it's a problem, but I think it's an equal problem that it will go down to it will spread to our villages.
Yeah. So you're saying we're lucky if we get away with a 1 crore figure. There is bound to be transmission in the rural areas. What is preventing the central government, Ms. Kamineni, from calling this a community transmission situation? Because that's clearly what it looks like, but we don't seem to want to admit it.
What will happen if you name it, if you don't name it? Is that a cure? Or it really doesn't matter. I think that what we have to understand is are things are and it's not that much about the center. As health has always been a state subject. So our states manage it well, and certain states are managing it well. So I wouldn't really shout about what they're naming it. I would really actually want to work with many state governments to be able to help. We're all in this.
I think part of the concern around the lack of admission about the stage we're at also comes from some concern about the lack of data clarity, the lack of transparency in sharing the numbers. I would imagine that is part of where the concern comes from. Do you share that concern in terms of the fact that numbers have not quite been as out there as they should in this situation?
I share one concern that early on, COVID was stigmatized. If you have it, you test it, you have it, you're thrown into a government facility. And I think that was the one that scared many people. So they had it and kept quiet about it. They probably had the symptoms, and so many 80% asymptomatic. They really didn't want to be thrown into this. So there was a lot of stigma attached to it. Now, as it's coming, I'm sure that any single citizen in India will know at least 5 people close to them who have had it. And so I think that the stigma is now less. And as that happens, because we still have ways to go before the vaccine comes in, once the stigma is over, then it will be something, because this is not going away. You can't put this, you can't put, Pandora's box is open, you can't put it back. So it'll be in the community, just like you have dengue, just like you have all these other communicable diseases that hit us every year. Just like you have the flu, the coronavirus will be one of them. It's just that we have to be able to understand it and manage it better.
The expectation during the lockdown also, Ms. Kamineni, was that state governments would use this time to work very closely with private healthcare infrastructure providers to build systems and processes. There is some criticism around that. In states like Delhi, for example, it's almost become a face-off between the private entities and the government. Was there enough and deep enough consultation, you think, with the private parties who actually provide the bulk of healthcare support, particularly in urban areas?
I think the fault is as much as with the private as it is with the government. And I'm from the private circuit. One is that here's a sector that was that was hit with a double whammy. One is you've got zero income for months. You've got zero income from elective surgeries. So just like hotels were empty and people could see it, but here you have hospitals that are empty, but you still have to keep nurses and doctors and everybody. And all of a sudden you're being called on to look after people in this pandemic. You're not really appreciated for it, but you're just, arbitrarily being told, this is it, this is the pricing. And I really have a big issue about the pricing because in normal cases, this thing will go away at low rates, or it won't cost much, just some medication, some things that you can do around it. But in the really critical cases that need, an ICU and just the number of PPEs, this is an expensive disease. I've seen people, who we've had to treat that costs them 17, 20 lakhs. So suddenly you put a cap on it. So then you're asked to lose money on this. You're asked to save their lives and lose, because people come to us in the last minute. They come to you out of desperation when they need this kind of thing. So at that, I think that, there was a bit of mismatch in the way that we worked on it. Delhi government did a good thing, that they actually put some pricing and said, create transparency. So, hospital chains like us that will have to coexist for many years to come, we could manage it because we were always transparent. But I found small hospitals that they said, okay, now here's an opportunity, let us recoup losses. So they were also doing wrong. That, they would charge people and say, you want a bed, we'll give, we're charging you this much, exorbitant. So there was some price gouging on the private side.
Yeah.
So what the Delhi government did was bring transparency. But when people start capping prices and putting things around it, that is a very short-sighted, because this disease is not understood enough for you to say that we can do this for if you cap the price. If you cap the price even of an open heart surgery, I can put something around it because I have lakhs and lakhs of data. Here you don't know. How can you cap it? So both.
Yeah. This is a crucial point, though, Ms. Kamineni, because I think this is exactly what many of the private healthcare providers are struggling with. The fact that they are being called to duty, but their hands are being tied financially in a situation where they are already struggling. What, to your mind, is the best solution going ahead in the next few months in terms of how to structure these price systems so that there is fairness for all parties involved?
I think it's very important that the private sector, people like NatHealth and CII and FICCI, reach out to the smaller nursing homes and the state nursing home societies to ask them to start behaving responsibly for this. So once that we have to do some amount of self-regulation, so this price gouging and all doesn't happen. And I think it's happening because of the criticality. So there's another thing is that beds are not available. In a shortage, this always happens. So, you can't expect everyone to behave rationally. So it's human nature. So in this critical situation, but I don't think that the government and GIC and all these people, pouring oil on these troubled waters, it's not calming the situation. I do think that there should be some amount of leeway, some amount of leeway that allows you do a lot, bring in, we should sit with them and say that, hey, let's solve for at least 90%. 10% we should be able to have that flexibility to say life. I mean, why would, what happens in the US, you heard, right? That a girl needed a double lung transplant because your lungs went off. How can you do it under those prices? So there is going to be, in the tougher cases, and I completely agree with you that it'll be very small percentage that will have to be outside that, but we have to leave room for it. We can't just cap everything, because then, that pressure cooker will explode because there's so much tension.
Yeah. Of course, one part of the problem is the healthcare infrastructure itself, and the other is the healthcare staff, Ms. Kamineni. I mean, we've seen videos like the one we saw from HBS Hospital in Bangalore, where a doctor was imploring other doctors to come and help, saying, "Look, I have the equipment, but I don't have the people." Uh, are you sensing that is sort of tipping over the edge, the situation for healthcare staff at this point?
I don't want to sound sanctimonious, but in Apollo, there are doctors of other specialities that just came in and said, "Hey, look, we'll work in this COVID ward." It was amazing, the spirit that is there. And the nurses, their parents were calling them home and they said, "No, this is our duty. This is what we trained for." And the good thing from our side is that people in our COVID ward really haven't got infected. So if you see the stats of what we are, we've been super careful.
Yeah.
So I think that, that there are some good stories, there are some tougher ones, and I can understand why a person doesn't want to, put up with the risk and the vulnerable ones. So we automatically tell our doctors who are not physically sick, please don't put yourself in the front line. It's not right. So there are certain conditions, and maybe those were the doctors that are hesitant to come forward, because this thing can really hit you hard.
Do you think, Ms. Kamineni, just like there is some amount of support required from the government in terms of planning the infrastructure, there is more support required for helping healthcare staff as well, whether it is in terms of, PPE availability or ensuring and safeguarding their interests, fighting the stigma, as you said? Do you feel enough has been done, within the Indian context to really sort of support and have the healthcare workers back?
I've seen Italy unfold and the US unfold, some parts of London. India, again, because of that lockdown and the thing, we have enough PPEs. The problem here is that the price caps are preventing people from actually using it correctly. So when you're capped, you're going to cut corners on such things. So that's the problem there. India has plenty of PPEs. We don't, you can have ventilators, you can have all this, but when you don't have the right facilities, the beds, and the people to manage them, I think that's an issue. One of the things that we did is with WHO, we were actually able to train virtually 1.6 lakh medical professionals and support workers how to use ventilators. So I think that kind of knowledge that we're using, using these capabilities to be able to train fast and furiously is going on. Will it be enough? I think we'll always be under pressure. But the fact is, just like the PPEs making it happen, many things are opening up where India is building more ventilators. India is creating more beds. India is training more people. But the pressure situation will always be there. I just think that we will not be as unprepared as the city of New York was.
I want to go back to the future of the business of the industry itself, Ms. Kamineni, because many sectors have been hit, harder than the others. The hospitality space, for instance, and hospitals as well. I mean, Q4 was lower for you. You've guided to cutting down costs, but what's your sense? Is this looking like the toughest patch you've seen while handling the reins at Apollo, as from a business perspective?
Yeah, for the last 20 years, we've never had this kind of decrease in growth, so I really, we haven't seen this, the Q1. Thankfully, we have the pharmacy business.
Yeah.
If it was just pure hospital business, I think we would be under serious pressure. So it's hit the healthcare, and I told you why. It's just because, the elective surgery, all those beds are empty. People are not coming in. Thankfully, one is the hospital business. The other is our ability that we had planned 6 months ahead, and we had a full digital service. So within 30 days, so many of our facilities turned digital. So that was another thing that was able to mitigate a lot of Q1. So as compared to others, I think that we're not in as bad shape.
Mm. I want to draw you away from the world of the medical industry because you've been past president at CII. You have a unique vantage point of what's happening with the economy. I remember in an interview in August 2019, you said the Indian economy is in a state of quote high blood pressure. If you had to describe the situation at this point with a medical corollary the same way, Ms. Kamineni, what would you say from what you see?
Yeah, that was when actually the GDP was falling. So we came in we came to this crisis at a time not when the industry was going up. When I was president, actually, one quarter, then again we picked up and got 7%. But here, I think it's realistically we were at 4 to 5%, and now for the first time they said in 36 years that India will lose. Good estimate is 9% of GDP. Bad estimate are 11%. So I think that we will be net at minus 4% growth. And this is so that's when people around us are talking about the green shoots and things that are coming up. That's all well and good. I'm seeing that in some FMCG. We're seeing that in cement. We're seeing that in quite a few industries. But I think that the base of what we're doing still needs a lot of inputs. We just need to get in there, because one is I heard the CMIEC and Mahesh Vyas said that lost 100 million jobs, 125 to 130 million jobs. 70 million have come back, but those are all labor. The salaried class are not getting their jobs back. So I really, to me, this middle class that have, their aspirations, their strive to come up has been so difficult. And in 3 months, the bottom has gone out. And these people have carpets, these people have house payments. So we have to build those jobs. What are we going to do? So even before I spoke about jobs, for the last, ever since I was president and post, I said India's future depends on jobs and job creation. Now, when all this has gone away, please tell me where this economy is going to really spring back unless we can get many of those construction jobs back. Where's the demand going to come from? Where's the consumption going to come from? We have been a consumption-led economy for a long time. That kind of really kept us going, the aspirational middle class, and so many people transitioning. So they wanted cars, they wanted motorbikes, they wanted all these, they wanted houses. So that kind of consumer was really good for the country. I'm hoping, and the retail, really, you bought clothes, you did all this. Suddenly all that goes away. I think we really have to, all of us, this is the time in the private sector, at no time in history did the private sector and the government, and I mean state governments, need to be so closely aligned to bring this country back and to mitigate that. So it's an opportunity.
It's also a danger.
And we should not get distracted.
It is an opportunity. I said it is an opportunity, certainly. It's also a danger if it is not attended to with the urgency that it requires. What do you fear might happen?
We are not an urgent country. I mean, I always feel that India is like a Hindi movie. You can come at interval and still get the story. So it is long drawn out. It's going to go on. So even for us to expect to work with agility, there'll be some industries that will work with agility. There'll be some governments, some municipalities that will work like that. I think we have to find those pockets and put little rockets under them. So it's not going to be the whole thing, but it's some things that we have to create, these few pockets that will make the tide rise. So all boats will rise with that. And so I'm not hopeful that at the beginning, all those things that we spoke about, big economic banks, we're spending all this money and all that. I think it will come from, these multiple small rockets that will fire, find them, make them better, move more, unshackle them, and just so I do think that so the way that they're looking at pharma industry been a great success. And we can supply to the world now. So we should find more of these. The chemical industry is doing well. I think that there'll be more agricultural jobs and consumption there.
That's an extremely
And each state, this is something that I've seen, that there's very little opposition in many of the states now.
Yeah.
So I think that they've all become more powerful, and so we have to be thinking on a state level also.
That indeed is happening with states and the center, Ms. Kamineni. So we hope that there is greater urgency, as you pointed out. The situation demands it. Thank you very much for joining in today. I really appreciate your thoughts on everything you've shared today. Thank you so much.
Okay.